All right, YouTube do-it-yourself fans, home repair guys and gals. I'm going to do a video today and show you how to disassemble a Miele Touchtronic W1213 front-load washing machine circa 2004. I thought it had bad main bearings, and I was wrong. And I was planning to completely disassemble it and change out the bearings. But I also knew from looking at other videos that this thing also has some shock absorbers that are attached to the drum and some springs that suspend the drum. So I bought the springs and I bought the shock absorbers and I also bought the bearing kit. And I got all of that from Miele USA. It was a little over 200 bucks for all those parts. You can get them cheaper on eBay, but you have to know the correct part number for your model. It was just easier for me to call Miele and get the parts for my machine, and I know they're quality parts because they come from Miele. Well, I thought I was going to have to change the bearings, but it turns out the bearings had not failed. The noise that I thought was bearing failure was actually shock absorber failure. In the high-speed spin cycle, the shock absorbers were squealing and making noise that sounded to me like bad bearings. So I wound up not changing out the bearings after all. But you'll see all that in the video. Partway through the video, there's a portion in there where I show a piece that's attached to the drum, and I said you do not have to remove this piece from the drum, and that is not correct. Let me show you. Right there in that area, once the front of the machine comes off, attached to the drum, there's a little thing that looks like a pressure transducer with two small hoses connected to it. And I said, just pull the hoses off and leave this thing attached to the drum. Well, don't do that. Go ahead and take that piece off, disconnect the two hoses, and take that transducer off the drum, because I actually broke it when I was putting the drum back in the machine after I changed out the bearing seals. So I don't edit my videos in post, so I'm just giving you a little prequel here to tell you something I said later in the video. Don't do it. Go ahead and take that piece off. You'll see what it is once you get the front of the machine off. Now, the other thing I want to say about the video, I didn't show everything in detail because I didn't have a videographer to help me. But I think you'll see that the video that I did show and the descriptions that I give should be sufficient for you to be able to do this job. Now, the very last segment at the end where I showed the drum reinstalled, that's where I stopped the video. Well, what you do from that point is just reassemble it all back in reverse order. It's really quite straightforward. So, you know, if you want to take video of yourself disassembling the machine so you know how to do it in what order, that wouldn't hurt. I did all that because I was going to make a video to put on YouTube, but it actually helped me in the reassembly process. So wouldn't hurt to videotape yourself taking the thing apart to give yourself a guideline when you put it back together. And also do, like I said, get all your bolts and screws and whatnot and put them in bags or boxes or some kind of container where you label all your screws so you know what screw goes where, because they're all different. One thing I didn't show on the disassembly, when you're taking the front of the machine off, I showed you how to take off the bottom fascia and then those bottom fixing bolts, and then that 10mm bolt right there. But I didn't show that you need to remove the door lock. So take those two bolts out and disassemble that door lock. I didn't show that, so do that. The other thing I need to mention You'll see during the disassembly video this switch sticking out from the top of the gasket, and I said cut that cable tie. Well, you don't need to cut that cable tie because you're not going to pull this out. Just leave that cable tie that secures that switch, just leave it alone. All you really have to do is pop the cap off of this, you'll see that in the video, and disconnect the wire, but leave the cable tie alone. Okay, YouTube washing machine repair fans, I've got a Miele W1213 from 2004. It's got crapped out main bearings, and I'm going to change those out. And I'm going to show you how to get this machine apart and how to change the bearings. The first thing you might think is if you could take off the back, you could easily get to the bearings. However, I discovered you cannot do that because the back is riveted to some cross members that connect it to the front into a big sturdy frame. So don't even think about trying to get the back off. It's not possible. First thing you want to do is take off the lid. And the lid has some little plastic caps that you can just pop out with your fingernail, and then use a Torx. Let me see if it's a T20 or a T25. Sorry for fooling around here. All right, it's a T20, and you'll use a T20 for this whole job. So pry off those plastic caps, take the Torx screw out, then this lid just simply folds up and comes off. You don't have to go back here and remove these screws. Those screws are just holding the hinge that this thing pivots on. So since I'm doing this handheld with the phone, I'm going to try to show you the best I can. But once you get these two screws out, this thing just goes up, and you can easily just slide it right off the back hinges. It's not connected back there. So that's how to get the top off. Now the next thing you want to do is take the front off. And you don't have to remove this control panel. I thought you did, and I spent an hour dorking around trying to get it off. But you don't need to do that. Basically what you're going to do is, of course the door is going to be on there. I've already got it off. But open the door, and there's a spring that fits in this groove underneath of here to hold this gasket in place. Reach in there with a screwdriver and lever that spring out, and then you can pull that wire retainer all the way out. Here's the wire retainer right here. That's the wire retainer, and this goes at the very bottom, just above the 10mm bolt. You just pry that out with a screwdriver and get this wire forward of the gasket, and then you can just go all the way around and pull it off. So pull off that wire retainer from the gasket. Now the next thing you need to do to get the front off, there's a fascia plate at the very bottom that fits right in here. Here it is right here. It's a fascia plate. I might have it upside down. Yeah, I do. And it's got these little cylinders that fit into these holes. And actually, I think it does go like this. And when it's in there, it just pops out. And what you do is you go underneath of it and you push these little tabs right here. There's a tab here and a tab here. And you can push those tabs in and up using the little plastic tool that comes with your Miele. So you just reach under there and you slide this and push over till you feel, and then get in there and just shove those tabs and just push them, and you can pop this fascia plate out from under here where it fits. You have to get this little fascia cover off, because the next thing to do to get this front of the machine off, there's some fixing bolts that fix, let's see where they fit. They might be here or they might be here. But anyway, you'll see, well here, let me pull them out. I'm trying to keep the video short and compact, but let me find those fixing bolts. Here they are. There's a couple of bolts, and they have a little plate that fits across here. And just take the two bolts out and the plate off, and then that releases the whole front door so that you can pivot it off after you remove this bolt. Remove this bolt last. Pop off that bottom fascia, take those bolts and those little retainer plates off, then remove this bolt. I just put it back so I wouldn't lose it. But you're going to remove that bolt, and while you're removing this bolt, hold the glass or the door opening up with your hand, because the front of this machine's heavy. But anyway, once you pull that bolt out right there, I'm going to put it back in. I'm sorry to waste time, but I put all my bolts back where they came from most of the time. Then you can open the drain door so that you can get access to this little doodad, because when you pull, the front of the machine is going to lever forward from the bottom, and then you can pull it off, but you got to pull this through the door, and there's a little slot in the door that pulls through. But the whole key to taking the front of the machine off is don't try to take the control panel off. Just first remove that gasket retaining wire in the spring, take the bottom fascia plate off, remove the fixating bolts, the two bolts in the little retainer strap, remove that 10mm bolt while you're holding the door, pull it out, release. That's the door release, you know, in case the door doesn't release. And the front will come right off. So that's how to get the top open and the front off. Remove the sides pretty easily. There's fixing screws here, here, where am I? There, and down there. The bottom one's different from the top two, so make sure to make note of that when you're stashing your screws, that you know that these two are the same. These two are the same, but that bottom one's different. But anyway, take those three out, then come across the top here. Here's one, and here's one. Again, these are all Torx T20. So take those out. You take the three off the back, three off the top, and then come around the front here, and there's one there, and one there. And you pull those out, those 9 Torx screws, you can get the side off. Now, as I'm removing my screws, to keep track of what they go to, I put them in a Ziploc bag with an indicator. So these 6 are from the right-hand side of the machine over here, and they're the 3 front screws and the 3 top screws. So I put those in a bag and label it. And I already bagged these back here. I told you before that the top one, or the top 2 are the same, but that bottom one's different. So I put those 3 in a separate bag, and well, I'm not sure where I put it, but anyway, I labeled it so that I know the 2 screws on the top are the same and the one on the bottom is different. Just basically catalog all your screws, because you're going to take out a potload of screws and you really don't want to forget what screw goes where and what secures what, because a lot of these are different. So catalog them in some fashion. You don't have to use a zippy bag, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, now you've got the sides off. Next thing I'm going to do is remove this tub drain piece here. And it's hard to get at this fixing screw because this other equipment's in your way of getting a tool in there. And I thought about just leaving it attached to the tub and taking it off later and just connecting these bits, but it's possible that these connections may have some kind of glue or sealant. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, when you hook them back up, you may get a leak. I guess you could put hose clamps on there. But I decided not to pull this assembly apart. I'm not pulling it out of here. I'm not pulling either of those off. I'm just going to go ahead and work hard and get in here with a Torx bit and get this thing loose so I can pull that off. Found this tool in my toolbox. It's a reversible ratcheting bit driver, and it fits right on there to get that thing loose so I can take it off. I also found this long driver that also works and fits in there and gets past that obstruction. So figure out a way to get that thing loose so you can pull that rubber drain thing off of there. All right, once I got that thing loose, I discovered that this Y fitting is just a push fit. I guess that drain's not really under a whole lot of pressure, and it wasn't glued or anything, so you could have just, pulled that apart and then left this attached to the drum until you took the drum out. But anyway, I was able to get it off easily. You can slide the belt off of the pulley easily. It just pulls off with your hand. It's no problem to get that belt off the pulley. Now you need to get the bottom drain off. You loosen those two Phillips head screws there, and you can pull that right off the bottom of the drum. And then, if you like, you can loosen that and rotate this thing out of your way. Or if you want to take it off completely, you can, but you don't have to. You could just loosen it and flip this out of the way so you'll be able to get the drum out of the chassis. But there's those two Phillips screws. Just loosen them and pull that drain off. If you have a long Phillips bit with a drill, it's a lot easier to get those two Phillips screws out of there than trying to crank them by hand with a hand screwdriver. They come out of there. And there's a ball valve in there, a check valve. But that's off the drum now.